maybe they have a sort of a childlike look at the world, and my presentation shows people what they're not seeing and helps them not only see their world in a new way, but also to become aware of what art is all about. So it's kind of an educational program.
What sort of things do you use to bring this to the people?
Well, simple things that I see around the house, kitchen utensils when I eat, the way the light shines on objects different times of the day, and different atmospheric effects, so that you could actually photograph one simple object all day long and get different results.
So you basically use photographs?
Photographs, yes. I use my camera as a teaching tool rather than documenting the world.
Now, you're a professor of art at a college in Nebraska.
Concordia Teachers College in Seward, Nebraska, yes.
And also, one of the things that has made your coming to San Antonio possible, as well as to other places, is Banker's Life in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Yes.
And you are their artist in residence.
Yes.
Now, what is that?
Well, several years ago, they had a program for the businessmen in Lincoln, and I was on a program. I showed my slides, and in the audience was a PR person from Banker's Life, and he liked what he heard, he liked what he saw, and he contacted me, and he thought maybe their insurance company could utilize what I was doing. And that's how it all began. A lot of corporations buy art for their offices and for banks and so forth. But this is an educational program. I'm helping people to see and to become more aware. And I think Banker's Life felt that there was a need for that in society, and they wanted to support the arts that way, rather than doing it in a physical way. So I'm sort of a teacher.
What sort of things do you do as the artist in residence?
My main thing is to do my slides, show my slides, but I also do workshops with family groups. When you think about it, most people seldom have a creative opportunity in their homes. And when I do a workshop, we have materials, and we explore materials, and they try to create something they've never seen before and invent things, and parents can work with children. And I try to get them to do something they've never done before, solve some problems, explore paper. And I think it's been very rewarding for them and for me to see the creative process working.
Does that sort of experience bring the people closer together?
Oh, certainly. Oh, certainly. Yes.
Also, another thing that you've done with your work with companies and corporations is going in and taking photographs of their assembly line, their offices, different aspects of it, and then presenting it to them in order so that they may see the beauty around their surroundings.
Exactly. I spend 3 or 4 days or a week in the place, and I photograph simple things, close-ups, and then we get the people together in a room, and we show them their world seen in a new way, and I think it makes them more aware of themselves, that they are somebody and that they can see. When you think about it, most of the things that people are aware of are based on PR and publicity and what other people say, and all of us have a power to be ourselves.
All of those things are manufactured.
Yeah.
Whereas the things around you are natural. Or they're part of what you don't have to manufacture. What are some of the most unusual things that you've found in doing that sort of photography in a place of business or work that people reacted to?
Well, maybe the way patterns of light, or maybe reflective surfaces are always interesting. I can't think of anything specific, but I think any common ordinary thing could be seen in an extraordinary way. And really, our world is a fantastic world. We don't have to go to Disneyland to see fantasy. And in the slides we're going to see in a few minutes, I'll share with you some of the fantastic things which are really very common.
One of the things I noticed in seeing your program yesterday morning was a slide that had a tree in it. And I know sometimes on a cloudy day, particularly in the spring, and it's been damp, and you look at the trees against the clouds in the dark, the bark, because it's wet.
Yeah.
And the form of it, it's really quite beautiful, even though there are no leaves.
That's right. That's right.
And to stop and notice those things is a
well, the
remarkable
world
thing.
really looks very different right after rain. Everything's clean and washed, and everything's dramatic, and it's very beautiful.
Do you find people, after seeing something, your presentation, do they become more apt to go out and take pictures themselves? I know a lot of people don't take pictures anymore.
I think they do, and I think after they see the show, they leave the room and they start looking at the ceiling and the floor, and they become very aware of their world. And I hope that they can retain that for the next week or the next month. And I even have to remind myself once in a while to stop and take a look. It's not automatic. You know, I'm busy too, and I rush around, and I have to stop myself and say, no, slow down and take a look at that and that and that.
Enjoy it.
Sure.
We live
it takes
such
an
fast
effort on our
lives.
part. We all have to make an effort to do that. It's not automatic. Yeah.
Something you pointed out also is the fact that infants, when they're newborn, the first weeks, days of their lives, they're not thinking. They're only using their senses.
Sure. And all the things they learn the first day, second day, third day is based on the senses. They're listening to sounds, and they're touching, they're feeling, and they're looking, and they see round red things and square yellow ones, and they feel the carpeting on the floor and mother's hair, and the kitchen becomes a universe, and a bedroom becomes another universe. And they really learn a lot the first, second, and third day, all through the senses. But then when they go to school, then they discover that everything has a name or a number, and so we start labeling things. And that's important. I'm not saying it's not important, but it's important. And, but I think something is missing when we make nouns of objects rather than seeing the life as a verb and as an action. And I hope that when we become old, we have a lot of time on our hands. Maybe if we have this power, we can again see the world the way a child saw it and see it in a fresh new way.
I think it's interesting because in thinking as you're talking here, I think of a number of great artists who did some of their most interesting and popular work when they were old.
That's right.
And
that's right.
Perhaps their perspective on life has changed, and they've been able to sit back and say, I'm through working and trying to pay the bills and take care of the kids, and I can look at things.
That's right.
And it comes out.
I'm 60 years old. I was 60 years old last week, and I'm enjoying life much more as I can look back, and the more you look back, the more you're aware of the world, and it's a very exciting time to live.
I remember reading in Dear Abby or something of that nature a while ago, and I've always remembered it. It was from an elderly man who was probably 70 or so, and he said he was very tired of reading letters from old people who said that they were in the worst part of their lives and everything else. He said, I enjoyed being old so much because I can say whatever I want to.
That's right.
Exactly what I feel. And they say, well, he's getting old, he's senile, or he's whatever, he doesn't know what he's saying. And he said, I know damn well what I'm saying.
That's right.
And I'm loving every minute of it.
That's right.
And I think
that's a good point.
That's something to look forward to, I think, because you can't always do that.
Yeah.
In your programs that are available, you travel around a lot, and you have different programs geared for different groups. You have one for adult audiences, one for church audiences, and one for schools. What are some of the differences in the different programs you present, or what you use in the programs?
One of the programs is called New Forms for Worship, and I belong to the Lutheran Church in my hometown, and my pastor allows me to do some very creative things during the Lenten season. And for the last 25 years, I've made things out of big pieces of cardboard and all kinds of things in our church. And this slideshow presents some new ideas about worship to people who are really very traditional about what worship can be. So that's one thing I do. Another slideshow I do has to do with the 12 disciples, and I did some mosaics about these 12 people. Sometimes we get the idea that the 12 disciples were holy people or bearded people, but they were really very young, and they were revolutionary, and they had different personalities, and they couldn't get along with each other, and they fought and they bickered, and so the slideshow identifies the first church being very much like the church today, not being able to get along, and that's nice. There's a lot of interesting tension there, and I think when a church has all the answers and does things the right way, maybe it's
kind of missing the point a little bit. Whether it's reason. How did you become interested in art to begin with?
I've always been interested in art, but my father was a Lutheran minister, and he wanted me to be a minister. And so we had this conflict. And so I made a compromise. I became a house painter. House painter and a wallpaper hanger. And then I went into service, World War III, and I served in the Pacific for 3 years. And I decided I was old enough to make up my own mind. And when I came back, I started under the GI Bill, and I went to art school in Chicago, and so I didn't become an artist until after I was in service.
Did you find it difficult? We often hear of starving artists suffering for your art, things like that.
Yes, I went through that in Chicago. No money, no job. In fact, I have to tell a story. I had no money, and I got a letter from Nebraska saying, we needed somebody to teach art over here, and somebody gave us your name. And when I got the letter, I threw it away. I crushed it up and threw it away in a waste paper basket. And I don't know whether it was named Nebraska or the Midwest. 2 weeks later, I got another letter saying, "Dear Mr. Marxhausen, we sent you a letter 2 weeks ago. It must have got lost in the mail. We want somebody to come here." And I guess it was a moment of conversion or something. I realized that this is where I need to go. I packed everything in my Chevy and went to Nebraska, never left it. And sometimes we have some preconceived ideas about where we ought to be and where we ought to live. And
what we ought to be doing.
Sure. And I'm in Nebraska, and I'm doing my best to make Nebraska the best place to be. I'm trying to do my best so it's not a cultural wasteland. I make a lot of movies, and I'm an educator.
I think a lot of people would be surprised to find you and what you're doing and your thoughts and what you're trying to do in Nebraska, because
Yes.
they just think of it as corn and cows and
That's right. That's
whatever,
right.
not an artistic
Sure,
environment.
exactly.
And it only reinforces your whole attitude about
Yes.
it's everywhere.
That's right. That's right. People always ask me, what kind of camera do you use? And I have to say I use a Sears and Roebuck camera. That's what I use, because people have the feeling that you need the best camera, and it's not true. You need to have the best eyes. The camera does it automatically.
Have you ever had a real strong negative reaction to any of this by a businessman or a company or an individual saying this is all garbage or whatever? Have you ever experienced anything like that?
No, not too much. No, I think the results have been very positive, and people have realized that maybe they have a void in their life, and that maybe they are somebody, and that they could become enriched by using the powers they all have, the powers of imagination. We all have those powers, but we just don't use them. And all I do is say it's there and use it.
I think two of the stories I've heard, and I've seen people do this with children, when they paint flowers and they make the rose blue or purple or the sky green and the grass orange or whatever, and somebody will tell them, well, grass is green, it's not orange, you can't do it that way.
Yeah.
And someone who has some foresight will say, no, it's not, it's whatever she wants it to be right now. I think that ties in too with what a lot of what you're saying.
I basically got coloring books, and my two sons never got coloring books. I just made blank books for them, and I bound them in leather, and I gave it to them. I said, you're an author, write your name in the first page and write your story. And I have a little library of the things my kids did when they were growing up, and those are more precious to me than any coloring books. And coloring books give you rules and regulations about what the world is like, and it's devastating for me to realize that my college students in my college today still use coloring books. And they tell me that when they have stress and when they have to prepare for a test, to feel good and to become pacified, they go downtown, buy a coloring book, and makes them feel real good to do something that is precise and has the right answers. That's awful. That's awful that our young people are that insecure.
I think it would be much better to draw freestyle lines, circles. I draw
take a piece of paper and just let it go. Right.
Ugly faces.
Sure.
Doodles.
Sure. Like jogging.
Yeah. Well, I don't like jogging a whole lot. I think I'd rather doodle. It's a little more relaxing and not near as much work. We're going to start looking at some of the slides that you use in your presentation. I'd like you to just talk about them as we see them and describe how it came about and what significance it has.
Our mind is a wonderful mechanism, and we only see and hear what we want to. So like this store window, you can see the reflections in the window, and you can see the things in the store, and you can see the cars across the street and the buildings across the way. You can see all that if you want to, but if we saw like that all the time, we'd go crazy. And so our mind sorts for us, and we only see and hear what we want to. But when we're bored, we can actually see this much about our world. And none of those slides you'll see are posed in any way, like I was eating breakfast one morning, and I just happened to look down at my fork on the table, and I saw that wonderful black shadow next to the fork. So I grabbed my camera and took that picture. It was not a posed picture, it's just something I found. And we can find all kinds of neat things like that. Here's a wine glass, and you can see the wonderful concentric circles in a shiny glass. But just extra bonus, there's a little shape on top, and that's like finding a prize in a Cracker Jack box. And so the world isn't just nouns, it's the verbs too. In my hometown, north of town, there's a sign for a bank, and everyone in town thinks it's a black sign with white letters. And the people at the bank were very surprised when I showed them this slide, and my slide made the white letters black, and black gold.
That's one of the most interesting things I've ever seen.
Yes, and it was just a moment in a day. Maybe it'll never come back again. When the sun was at the right angle, I happened to be in a cornfield, I could see that effect. It's very striking. So the point is, black isn't black, white isn't white. We need to decide for ourselves what it is. This Mondrian painting shows a painting using vertical and horizontal lines, and he also used a lot of primary colors, and I liked especially the red panel in the lower right-hand corner. And I drove downtown in a little town in Nebraska, and I was really surprised to see this Mondrian-like design on the wall of this barber shop. And there you see the rectangles and the verticals and the horizontals and a little red panel down in the corner. So we can look at nature and relate it to art, and we can look at art and relate it to nature, and we can build those bridges. You know, the daughter looks like the mother, and the father looks like the son, and this looks like that. Zebras are beautiful animals, and they're well designed, and we ought to admit that we like zebras because we like lines. If you took the lines off of a zebra, they would just be ordinary donkey-like animals.
Is it black with white stripes or white with black?
That's right. So really very beautiful. And one day I was driving to Omaha, and I was really surprised to see how the snow fences over the cows created a zebra-like animal out of the cattle. That was a delightful moment. When I fly in airplanes, I usually get a window seat. I like to look out of the windows, and one day I was flying over Nebraska, and I looked out and saw all these wonderful lines that the farmer made by cutting the alfalfa. And so farmers, in a sense, are artists because they're shaping and scratching the earth and the surface.
But no one would ever think to look at it that way.
No, that's right. And they tore down a house in Lincoln, and they had a bunch of asbestos tiles from the kitchen. And I took 12 of these tiles with the glue in the back, and I just flipped them over. And I made this work of art just by coloring some of the tiles yellow and some green. And I call this Nebraska Landscape. And this is what I see. And there's a plowed fields and so forth. So that relates to my life and where I live. We don't have mountains in Nebraska, but when I'm out in top experience, I can just go down to the elevators down by the railroad track, and I can lie down on the ground and look at a little pile of grain that's been piled in the ground. This pile that you see is just about 5 feet tall. It's just a very small thing. That's amazing. It is, yes. There are three places where you can find beauty. One is to go to nature and see for yourself. The second place would be if you went to an art gallery like this and saw some new ideas made by artists. The third place would be if you found a piece of drift or some accidental thing in nature and you picked it up because you liked it. I had a table with a tin top, and I didn't want the tin anymore, so I tore it off. And before I flung it away, I looked in the back where the glue stuck, and I found this wonderful, soft, Japanese watercolor-like design. So I framed it. It hangs in my living room, and when people come, they ask, "Where'd you get that nice work of art?" And I usually say, it's just something I picked up. And I'm surprised how many people actually like that thing.
It's the type of thing, I think, that you can look at, and as you say in your presentation, you look at clouds and you see things.
Faces in clouds,
and the other interesting point you make is that you can do it and you don't have to tell anybody.
That's right. Do it secretly, privately. That's right. Because it would be embarrassing to tell somebody that you're wasting your time doing that.
Looking for animals in clouds.
And there's a lot of fantastic moments in our life. I was in a little town one day where there was a blue building. And that particular moment, the blue building blended in with the blue sky. And it looks like the shadow of a tree just stops in midair. It's a wonderful moment. All of us have moments like that. And here's just some dirty water, just a dirty little creek, and we can see lines and colors and shapes, very abstract designs floating around in the water. And one night while I was staying at a motel, it was midnight, and I walked out of the motel to get some air. And here was this car parked in front of the building with a neon sign shining on a shiny surface. And it was just delightful to see those green and red stripes on this car. At our house, my wife cooks, and I wash dishes. And I actually like to wash dishes. There's a nice feeling to it. One night we had spaghetti. Before I dried the spaghetti strainer, I noticed that there was a drop of water in every hole. And I went to the dining room and put a light bulb inside, and I just took a picture of the holes. And that's what you see. Every hole had a different image, and I still don't know how that happened.
Looks like some sort of strange galaxy or something like that.
But the nice thing was that no one told me to do that. I discovered it while I was